Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today is my championship video for my 2028 presidential bracket video series where we have the last remaining Republican and the last remaining Democrat facing off in the final matchup. We also have a 2028 election prediction that I will go through as part of this video along that as well. So for this video, we are going to have the last remaining Republican, J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, facing off against the last remaining Democrat, Kamala Harris, the former Vice President of the United States, for the 2028 presidential bracket championship. This is going to be who I think right now is most likely to be the next president of the United States come 2028, if you can even imagine that far out. So how we got here? Well, J.D. Vance, for starters, ended up defeating Missouri Senator Josh Hawley in the first round of the Republican primary. He then faced off against Texas Senator Ted Cruz in the second round, and then he faced off against Marco Rubio, the Florida Senator, now Secretary of State for President Trump, in the third round. And then in the fourth round, J.D. Vance took on Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin in the final round, which I had Vance winning, and advanced to the final matchup. As for Kamala Harris, I had her going up against Tim Walz, her running mate out of the state of Minnesota in the first round. She defeated him. Then she went up against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the second round in a very close matchup. I had Harris advancing. Harris then went off against her fellow Californian Gavin Newsom in the third round, in which I had Harris winning that matchup. And then Harris faced off in the final round against Pete Buttigieg, and I had Harris narrowly winning that to advance to the final. So now the matchup is set. For right now, as of today, I believe it will be J.D. Vance versus Kamala Harris in the 2028 presidential election in the 2028 CNN presidential bracket. Obviously, things can always change from now until 2028. We have a long time to go. Honestly, it's a lifetime in politics, 3 years, so who knows how things are going to go from now to then. But as of today, I have Vance facing off against Kamala Harris. I also currently have a 2028 election map pulled up that I'm going to give the electoral votes for each candidate and look at some election results as well. We're going to look at the election results for the 2024 electoral map as well and look at some past elections as well on that. So for starters, how does this go? Well, there are some states based off the 2024 election, 2020 election, and even 2016 election that we know for certain are going to go for Harris and Vance automatically, regardless of the polling numbers. The big contingent, and I can't stress this enough, for how 2028 Harris versus Vance will go, is going to be how the Trump-Vance administration is doing at this time. We saw Harris run against Trump in 2024. In large part, Trump was able to win because of how poorly the Biden administration was being viewed. In 2028, it's possible if the Trump administration is being viewed similarly as negatively as the Biden administration was, that Harris could be able to win. But if the Trump-Vance administration is doing good, then Vance could be able to win. So it really is contingent how that ends up going. Right now, the latest polling numbers I have for this matchup at this time, we have President Trump sitting at an approval rating of about 47.7% to disapproval rating of 49.6%. So Trump's approval rating is currently negative on the RCP average by about 1.9 points. And if you can see, since his beginning of his second term in January, the trend has been a slow and steady decline for Trump, though it has not been too much when you look at the grand scheme of things. When Trump is at 50.5%, he's now down to 47.7%, compared to his 2020 numbers, where come election day, around early November, Trump was sitting around 45 to 46% approve and about 52.5% disapprove. So Trump was down at that point by about 6 to 7 points, whereas now he's only down by about 2.5. But as always, things could always change between now and Election Day 2028. But back to the election prediction itself. There are some states we know for sure are going to be safe Republican and safe Democrat based on the last few elections. For instance, we know the state of Washington will be safe Democrat, and while we're doing it, we're also going to do the Democratic ones first. Hawaii will be safe Democrat, we know that one for sure, as well as the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Delaware in all likelihood, Maryland, Connecticut, Vermont, and Maine's 1st District we know will all be safe. On the Republican side of things, We know for sure that Idaho and Wyoming and Utah will be safe, as well as Montana, the Dakotas, Nebraska, the state itself in the 3rd district, and maybe the 1st district will be safe as well. Oklahoma, I think at this point we could put Texas in this category as well after seeing what happened in the 2024 election. A lot of the southern states, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and West Virginia will all be safe. South Carolina as well. We also have some states that are kind of borderline between being safe Democratic states and likely Democratic states, but I'm more on the side of I think in 2028 Illinois will go back to being a safe Democratic state, as will the state of New York. I could be wrong, but I think it's more likely than not those states go back to being safe. Same with Oregon, and obviously I forgot a big one, the state of California. California will be a safe Democratic state. So this puts Kamala Harris at about 167 electoral votes that we know for a fact she will win. J.D. Vance at about 156. Now we start looking at the states that are sort of in between being safe states and being likely states. And we're going to start with the state of Kansas and its 6 electoral votes. Kansas, we just saw in 2024 go for Donald Trump by about 16 points, so right on the edge of being a safe state and a likely state. In 2020, it voted for 14.6 points for Trump, and in 2016, it was a 20.6 win for Trump. So it's really right in the edge between safe and likely. I just wanted to address it a little bit. I do think it goes safe, but I wanted to give a little bit more extra context to Kansas. This puts Vance up to 162. Harris is at 167. Now we're going to start with the state of Colorado. Colorado at one point was a very close battleground state in the early 2000s. For instance, we can go back to 2000 when Bush won it by 8 points, and then 2004 he won it by 4.7. 08 Obama won it by 9. 2012 Obama won it by 5.5. 2016 Clinton won it by 4.9. In 2020 Biden won it by 13. 2024 Harris won it by 11. I think at this point it's pretty safe to say that we could see Colorado, being more of a likely Democratic state. Maybe it trends more blue, maybe it trends more red. We'll have to wait and see. But the track record in the last few election cycles has been Colorado as a likely Democratic state. A similar statement could probably be made at this point for the state of Maine, where Maine, in 2024, the state at large voted about 6.9% for Harris over Trump statewide. That's likely Democratic. We will be getting to the 1st district as well in just one second. In 2020, it voted 9.1% for Biden over Trump. That's also likely Democratic. In 2016, it did only go for Clinton by 2.9%, but there was a lot of third-party vote. Gary Johnson getting almost 5% of the vote. Back in 2012, it was a safe Democratic state for Obama, just barely almost likely Democratic. And in 2008, it was a safe Obama state. So Maine has trended to be a little bit more Republican than it has been in the past, but I think it would still squarely begin as likely Democratic at this time, meaning it would be more than a 5-point win for Harris, but not more than a 15-point win. Or more than 5 points, but not more than 15 points either. As for Maine's 2nd district, which I showed you, is kind of been the trend of Maine, where it's trended a lot Republican recently. Trump won it by 9 points in 2024. In 2020, Trump won it by 7.4. In 2016, Trump won it by 10.3. Back in 2012, Romney lost it by 8. In 2008, McCain lost it by 11. So it went from likely Democrat to likely Republican with Trump on the ballot, and I think J.D. Vance will be able to continue that streak of winning Maine's 2nd district in the likely Republican column. This puts Harris at 179, Vance at 163. Now we're getting into some states that I think are a bit on the closer side to maybe being likely to lean. Like, for instance, I think likely in the first part was likely to safe in between 7 to 15. Now we're starting to get into that 5 to 10, 5 to 8 threshold on that. Starting with the state of Iowa and its 6 electoral votes. Iowa is a state that saw a rapid shift in recent elections. It went for Trump by 13.2% in 2024. It went for Trump by 8.2% in 2020. 2016, it went for Trump by 9.4%. 2012, it was a 5.8% win for Obama. In 2008, it was a 9.5 point win for Obama. So what happens after Trump is no longer on the ballot in Iowa is a mystery, but it certainly trended more Republican in recent years. I think it remains a likely Republican state for now by the margins. I don't think it goes safe Republican yet, though it is getting close in the margins. I don't think it reaches that threshold yet at this time. The state of Virginia, we saw a bit of a Republican resurgence in 2024. We saw it go for Kamala Harris by 5.8%, which would be a likely Democratic win, just by a little bit, by about 8/10%. But 5.8%. In 2020, it went for Joe Biden by 10.1%. So Trump almost cut the Biden margin of victory down to Harris almost in half. In 2016, we saw Hillary Clinton win it by 5.3%. So that's 3 elections in a row where Virginia was likely Democratic. Actually, Clinton at 5.3% is won it by less than what Trump did, or than what Harris did in 2024, even though she had Tim Kaine on the ballot. It's certainly not like 2012 when it was a lean Democratic state and it was more of a battleground state. 2008, it was a likely Democratic state from Obama. The track record for Virginia has been, at the presidential level, it's a likely Democratic state, and I don't really see too much of a change there for 2028. I think Harris would win Virginia in the likely Democratic margin. This puts Harris at 192. Vance is at 169. Now we have the state of Ohio. Ohio used to be a very, very close battleground state, one of the most contested states in the entire country. In 2024, Trump won it by 11.2%. In 2020, Trump won it by 8%. In 2016, Trump won it by 8.1%. And in 2012, Obama won it by 3%. So it's a state that's trended a lot Republican in recent years. And I think Vance, being from the state of Ohio, will continue that trend of the Trump administration, putting Ohio 17 electoral votes in Vance's column. This currently has Harris at 192, Vance 186. We're getting into the last few remaining likely states. Now we're going to do the state of Alaska, which I wanted to give a little bit of attention to because Alaska voted by 13.1% for Trump in 2024. In 2020, it voted for Trump by 10.1%. And in 2016, it voted for Trump by 14.7%. So this is a state that voted likely Republican in 3 presidential elections in a row. And I really did not expect to see that, in all honesty, but it has voted likely Republican in all 3 elections, including in 2012 for Romney by 14 points. So the last time it was a safe Republican state was 2008 with John McCain. So based on the history of Alaska, the trend has been it's been a likely Republican state and not a safe Republican state. But where maybe some Republicans have a little bit of pause with the state of Alaska, one that's been great for Republicans is the state of Florida. Florida in 2008 was won by Barack Obama by 2.8%. In 2012, Obama defeated Romney here by just 0.88%. In 2016, Donald Trump won the state by 1.2%, flipping it to the Republicans. In 2020, Trump was able to win it by 3.4%. And then in 2024, really broke open. Trump won the state by 13.1%. Florida has moved a lot to the right. It's become a lot more of a Republican stronghold than it was when it was a toss-up state. Florida would now, for J.D. Vance, start out as likely Republican with the possibility of him gaining voters and winning it by over 15 points as more people move to the state of Florida. I could absolutely see Florida being safe Republican come 2028, but for right now, I would start it off as likely Republican. This puts Vance at 219. Harris is at 192. Now we have the state of New Jersey. This is the state everyone was fascinated by in 2024 because in 2024, the state of New Jersey, Kamala Harris won the state by 5.9%, which Virginia went 5.8%, and Virginia used to be a swing state. New Jersey was a solidly Democratic state, and it went for Harris by only 5.9%. In 2020, Joe Biden won the state of New Jersey by almost 16 points, 15.9. In 2016, we saw Hillary Clinton won it with a lot of third-party vote by 14.1%. And in 2012, Obama won it by a safe margin. Same thing in 2008. So aside from 2024 or from 2016, New Jersey was looking like a safe Democratic state, but Trump cut it from a Biden win of about 16 points down to a 6-point win in 2024. 2026 and 2028 are going to be fascinating to watch for New Jersey because either New Jersey goes back to being a safe Democratic state or it continues to be a likely Democratic state, or if the Republicans can make up a lot of ground in New Jersey, maybe it'll become a lean Democratic state and maybe even a toss-up state 10 years after 2028. It is certainly possible. For now, I think in the 2028 election, I would still start New Jersey off as likely Democrat in a very similar margin of victory to what Virginia did. I think that's where it remains right now. But New Jersey is not the automatic slam dunk safe Democratic state in the same way that like Rhode Island or Massachusetts was. Now it's more the likely Democratic threshold as like Virginia and Colorado. And in our next state, the state of New Mexico. New Mexico is interesting because in 2024, Kamala Harris won the state by about 6 points over Donald Trump, 51.85 to 45.85. In 2020, Joe Biden won it by 10.8 points over Donald Trump, and in 2016, it went for Hillary Clinton by 8.2 points over Donald Trump. So it's been a likely Democratic state in the last three elections in 2016, 2020, and 2024, and it was likely Democrat as well in 2012. In 2018 or in 2008, it was barely a safe Democratic state. So even though the numbers have been a little bit different, and it did go down about 4 points in the margin of victory, almost 5 points from 2020 to 2024, I think we can pretty safely say for now, New Mexico would have to start out as likely Democrat for the 2028 election. This puts Kamala Harris at about 211 electoral votes, J.D. Vance at about 219, and we have 108 electoral votes remaining. These areas that I have in white right now that I'm about to highlight in yellow is where I think the battleground states of the 2028 election are going to be really settled. These states all at some point were very, very close in the 2024 presidential election, or the results ended up being very close on election day after the polls showed they weren't going to be, and then they were. And I think these states are what we're going to have to watch for 2028. I'm going to start, just to get it out of the way, with Nebraska's 2nd District. Nebraska's 2nd District, which is right here, I believe this has the city of Omaha in it. This is an area that's been fast growing towards the Democratic side for a while. In 2024, it went for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump by about 4.7%. So right on the threshold between being a lean Democrat and a likely Democrat win for Harris over Trump. In 2020, we saw it go for Biden over Trump in a likely Democratic margin of 6.6%. In 2016, we saw Donald Trump win it by 2.2%. So this area, and Trump also won it by a plurality, not a majority of the vote as well. In 2012, we did see Mitt Romney win it by about 7.1%, but this district has consistently led to the Democratic side. The question here for Nebraska's 2nd District for 2028 is whether or not Harris would win it in a lean or likely Democratic margin. And I think, seeing as it was right on the threshold between being lean Democrat and likely Democrat, I would actually give a very narrow advantage and put it as likely Democrat for Harris versus Vance. Now we have the remaining 107, and we have a lot of the typical swing states you may be familiar with in 2024. I'm going to start west and work my way east with the state of Nevada. Nevada saw a big trend in the last few years. We saw in 2012, it was a 6.7 win for Obama over Romney. In 2016, it was very close with Clinton versus Trump. It was a 2.4% win for Clinton. In 2020, we saw a 2.4% win for Biden over Trump. Now in 2024, we saw a big swing of about 5 points, and we saw Trump win the state by 3.1% over Harris, getting a majority of the vote, 50.59% over Harris. The question will be in Nevada. This is the first time Nevada's voted Republican since, I believe, 2004. Yes, since 2004. The question will be, can Vance keep it in the Republican margin, and if so, by how much? And I think right now, based on everything we have with President Trump's approval ratings and everything starting out, he is disapproved by a little bit close to 2 points. I do still think J.D. Vance will be favored to win the state of Nevada, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to win it by as much, like the 3.1% that Trump did, but I think he could probably win it by 1.2 to 1.3, similar to what Joe Lombardo did when he defeated Steve Sisolak, the governor, in 2022. I would have Vance starting out the favorite in Nevada. Now the state of Arizona. Arizona is a state that for years now has been trending towards the Democratic side, and 2024 seemed to be a big pushback of that. Trump won the state of Arizona by 5.5% in 2024. In 2020, it very narrowly flipped for Joe Biden, 0.31% for Biden as still Democrat. In 2016, it was a lean Republican state for Trump, and in 2012, it was a likely Republican state for Romney. Arizona is definitely in the toss-up category, without a doubt, but that swing back to the Republican side at plus 5.5 for Trump over Harris, I think was certainly very significant. How Vance will do in 2028 remains to be seen, because Vance does not have, I would say, some of the problems Trump did in Arizona with the McCain family. That did not seem to be an issue in 2024, but was an issue in 2020. Vance wouldn't have those problems, but at the same time, Trump is also good at turning out a lot of rural conservatives to turn out to vote that I'm not sure Vance will be able to do as well. So I actually think Arizona stays about the same, if not maybe goes down a little bit into lean Republican, instead of going into likely Republican. I think it stays in the lean, which means under 5. Now we have two states that I think are very, very close and going to be real toss-ups for the 2028 election. These are Georgia and North Carolina. Georgia was a very close election in 2024. Donald Trump won the state by 2.2%. And Kamala Harris did not do as well as Joe Biden did, but came very, very close at 2.2%. 2020, Joe Biden won the state by 0.24% of the vote. Biden got 49.47% of the vote in 2020. In 2024, Harris got 48.53%. So Harris did about almost a point worse than Biden did, but Trump was also able to get the rest of the vote really and consolidate those numbers. In 2016, we saw Donald Trump win the state by about 5.1%, but again, Trump got about 50.38%. So the Democrats consolidating support from 2016 to 2020 in large part, and Trump doing a little bit worse was able to get a lot of that vote difference and flip the state blue. How it goes for 2024 is going, or for 2028 is going to be fascinating, because the Republicans' problem in Georgia is still Atlanta and the surrounding Atlanta suburbs are all growing in population still. In the past few elections, that has definitely benefited the Democrats. But at the same time, Biden won by a plurality of the vote in 2020 in a very close election when Trump was only getting the low 49.2%, and Trump was able to break 50% in 2024. Who knows what 4 years of migration into the state of Georgia will look like? So it's possible Georgia flips to the Democrats in 2028. I'm absolutely not ruling that out. I am starting Georgia off, though, as actually tilt Republican, which is the closest ranking right now that I can give, is tilt would be under 1%. I am starting Georgia as tilt Republican, but it is very conceivable that Georgia could be a pure toss-up to tilt Democratic state by 2028. Will it be? I'm not sure. But again, I think it is certainly possible. The state of North Carolina is one that has been consistently very, very close throughout the past few elections. In 2024, Donald Trump won the state by 3.2% over Kamala Harris. That would be lean Republican. 2020, Donald Trump won the state by 1.3% against Joe Biden. That is also lean Republican. 2016, Donald Trump won it by 3.7%. That is lean Republican. 2012, Romney won it by 2 points. That's lean Republican. In 2008 was the last time Obama and the Democrats won it by 0.33%. North Carolina in the past few elections has been very, very close, but in 2024, like most states, we saw it swing back a little bit towards the Republican side, still being lean Republican, but over doubling and almost tripling Trump's margin in the state from 2020. As for 2028, I think the trend in North Carolina continues where it'll be very competitive, but I do think J.D. Vance will hold on to the state in the lean Republican margin. I think if there's going to be areas where Kamala Harris is going to improve on, maybe North Carolina will be one of them. But I think of all the potential swing states for 2028, I don't think North Carolina is the one that's most likely to flip to the Democratic side. So Vance is nearing 270 electoral votes. At 268, Harris is still at 212. But that does not mean Harris is not going to win any of the remaining states, because she certainly is. Starting with the state of Minnesota and its 10 electoral votes. Minnesota, with Tim Walz as her running mate, we saw Harris win the state by 4.2%, a lean Democratic win. In 2020, we saw Biden able to push it up to 7.1%. That was a likely Democratic win. And in 2016, with a lot of third-party vote, Clinton won by 1.5%. We've seen, so Clinton got 46.45, but in 2020, Biden got 52.4, and Harris got about 50.92%. I think the commonality in Minnesota is the Democrats getting around 50 to 51% in modern day presidential politics in Minnesota, while the Republicans and Trump get around 46 to 45% or so in the state of Minnesota. That seems to be where Trump is around Minnesota. At 46.68%, this is the best a Republican has done in Minnesota since I want to say 2004, where Bush got 47.61%. So Trump is certainly putting the Republicans in a good position to try and contest Minnesota in 2028, but I do still think Minnesota starts out as lean Democrat in the 2028 election, and I would certainly bet Harris is favored to hold on to that state. Now we have the state of New Hampshire and its 4 electoral votes. New Hampshire is fascinating because I'll admit this is a swing that I did not see coming in 2028. We saw in 2024. In 2024, we saw Kamala Harris win the state of New Hampshire by just 2.8% over Donald Trump. And Harris did get a majority of the vote, 50.65%. Trump lost the state by 2.8%. But you may be wondering, okay, well, why am I surprised by this? In 2020, we saw the state go for 7.4 points for Joe Biden over Donald Trump, 7.5 points for Biden over Trump. And in 2016, it went for Clinton over Trump by just 0.37%. And if you look at the numbers here, Trump got 46.46%. In 2020, Trump got about 45.36%. So Trump went down about 1 point, but Biden got about 6 points higher than what Clinton did. And I didn't think there'd be too much of a difference. I just think New Hampshire was one of those toss-up states that just doesn't resonate with President Trump so much. But 2024 seemed to show that that may no longer be the case, as Trump was able to improve his numbers by about 2 to 3 points from 2020, and Harris did about 2 to 3 points worse than Joe Biden did. As for 2028, it's possible that New Hampshire could continue that trend of maybe people from around the country moving to New Hampshire and trying to flip the state red, but I would still start New Hampshire out as a lean Democrat in the 2028 presidential election. And the big reason why is even though 2024 and 2016 were close, the last time New Hampshire voted red at the presidential election, you have to go all the way back to the year 2000. So by 2028, it will have been 28 years since New Hampshire voted red at the presidential level, and Bush only won it by 1.3% when Ralph Nader was taking almost 4% of the vote away in third-party vote. So the historical trend for New Hampshire has certainly been a close election, but a Democratic win of the presidential race. I'm not sure if Vance will be able to win New Hampshire in 2028. Maybe with enough migration to the state, that may change, but we're going to have to wait and see on that. Now we're into the three Rust Belt states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And as usual, I think these three states will decide who wins the 2028 election. And these three states were very, very close in 2024. Closest among them was the state of Wisconsin, which voted for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris 49.60% to Harris's 48.74%. In 2020, we saw Wisconsin barely go for Biden by 0.63%, which, again, 2 election cycles in a row had Wisconsin being decided by under 1%. In 2016, again, it was decided by under 1% for Trump, 0.76%. The difference was in 2016, Trump was able to win against Clinton in large part due to a lot of third-party vote from Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, whereas in 2020, Joe Biden was able to win the state against Donald Trump due to a lot of third-party vote being consolidated behind Biden. And then in 2024, Trump was able to win because of a lot of third-party vote being consolidated behind him. Vance and Harris are going to have a very tough time in Wisconsin in 2028, I think, because Harris is going to have the problem. She was just on the ballot in Wisconsin, and the voters very closely did not vote for her. But Vance will also have the problem of trying to keep the trends that Trump made in the Milwaukee area, in the Madison area, and the surrounding suburbs around it, trying to keep those gains on the Republican side. And it's really tough because we haven't seen a Republican presidential election without Donald Trump on the top of the ticket since Mitt Romney in 2012. So when Trump is not at the top of the ticket, yes, Vance is Trump's VP, and it would be a continuation of Trump's policies and the Trump agenda. But will voters turn out for Trump the same way, or turn out for Vance the same way they did for Trump? That all remains to be seen. My gut reaction right now is I think they will, but I'm not sure if every single voter will, and that'll be a big test for 2028. But Wisconsin was tilt in 3 presidential elections in a row, and I do think that will continue. I do think it will be a tilt win again. But the question is, will it be a tilt win for Harris or a tilt win for Vance? Right now, as of the time I'm recording this video, I do think JD Vance would still be favored to win the 2028 election. President Trump's approval ratings have gone down about a few points. They've certainly taken a hit, and I think a large reason for that has been the tariffs and the economy. I do think 3 years from now that I think the economy and the tariffs will be a little bit more under control, and the economy may start doing better as it did in the third year of Trump's first term, when the economy started to do really well before COVID hit. I think we may see something similar this time around, and if that's the case, then I think this electoral map where Vance beats Harris is very realistic and can happen again. If I'm completely wrong and the economy is still doing bad and tariffs are still hurting America come 2028 or come 2027, then this prediction will certainly age very poorly, and then we could very well see Harris defeat Vance and maybe even in a blowout type win. This is how I feel the election would go right now, subject to change, of course, but this is how I see things right now. For the state of Michigan, Michigan's fascinating because the three Rust Belt states have voted in unison in every single election. I want to say since, I think, the 80s. Since 1988, they split. Every election after that, they voted in unison. Michigan went for Donald Trump by 1.4%. Trump was able to get 49.73. Harris got 48.31. In 2020, though, Biden got 50.62%. Trump got 47.84%. And in 2016, Michigan voted the least Republican of the three states with 0.22%. Again, a lot of third-party vote. How does Michigan do without Donald Trump at the top of the ticket remains to be seen. But if I have Vance winning Wisconsin and the three states sticking together, I think at very least the historical precedent of the states would suggest Michigan would stay for Vance. But like Michigan or like Wisconsin, I think it does go tilt Republican this time, again showing that I don't think Vance would perform as well as Trump did. And lastly, we have the state of Pennsylvania, the swing state to end all swing states. Pennsylvania was a 1.7% win for Donald Trump in 2024, Trump actually breaking 50% of the vote and winning the state in 2024, the largest win out of the three Rust Belt states by percentage. In 2020, we saw Joe Biden win the state by 1.2%, so it was a lean Republican win in 2024, a lean Democratic win in 2020, and then a tilt Republican win in 2016. What's going to happen in Pennsylvania after 2024 and going into 2028 is going to be fascinating because I could very easily just say it's going to go tilt Republican or tilt Democrat, and really there's not too much to argue here because how close of a state Pennsylvania is. I do think, though, in this prediction, I would give narrowly Pennsylvania as lean Republican for J.D. Vance because I do think of the three Rust Belt states, Pennsylvania is going to cement itself of the most Republican of the three in the next 4 years. And electing Dave McCormick to the Senate was a big surprise I did not see coming. Yes, Republicans and President Trump had a very good night in 2024. Maybe that will get replicated in 2028. Maybe it won't. But I think of the three states, all three of them will vote in unison once again. I'm not going to break that trend for an official prediction until I actually see it happen, seeing as I'm going off on about 30 years of presidential precedent on that. I'm not going to be the one to break it in this video. But I do think Pennsylvania is a little bit more Republican than the other two states, which pushes Vance's win over 1 point. So right now, my presidential prediction for Vance versus Harris has Vance getting 312 electoral votes, Harris getting 226 electoral votes, which is the same number of electoral votes as the Trump versus Harris election was in 2024. The difference is there is some closer margins of victory in pretty much every single toss-up state. I think Vance loses a little bit of support than Trump in pretty much every single toss-up state, but not enough for Harris to be able to flip the states to her side. So with that, that's my 2028 prediction. Now we can go to the 2028 presidential bracket map, where in the final matchup of Harris versus Vance, I officially have J.D. Vance winning here to be the 2028 presidential bracket winner. I'll zoom in here as well just to see. J.D. Vance is my pick for the 2028 presidential bracket. This video series has been a ton of fun to do. I really enjoyed doing this. I really hope you enjoyed this series. Make sure to give the video a like. Leave a comment below telling me who your winner is for the 2028 bracket. I'm really interested to hear in the comments. If you disagree with my prediction of J.D. Vance, if you had someone else, maybe you had Kamala Harris, please leave a comment below telling me why. I'm very interested to hear and read all your comments about that. Thank you so much for watching. Also, make sure to hit subscribe as I post at least one new video every single day that you are not going to want to miss out on. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in the next video.